Okay, welcome.
Just summarize.
It's like Shabbat last week, I think it was. I sat there and introduced everybody and gave everybody instructions and all that kind of stuff, and then I realized I hadn't turned the mics on. So, okay, let's try this again. This is for the recording, so welcome to Lunch and Learn Passover, second part of our Passover series. And so we'd already actually recorded some previously, been talking, realized we didn't have the record button pushed, and we were saved by the bell by our Mr. Jeremy Schoenwald. Thank you, sir. Okay, so we're talking about the Haggadah and talking about the Seder. Haggadah is a telling, and it guides us through the Seder, and it specifically addresses the issue of when God says, "And if your son shall ask you, you tell him." Okay, so that's what we're dealing with the Haggadah. And the Haggadah, it deals with all these different kinds of things. So you remember, if you've ever done a Seder, there are the 4 types of sons and the 4 questions. Those go to specifically address this issue. And so you have the 4 types of sons. Okay, the son, I'll just bring them up here. The 4 sons, so there's the wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the son that doesn't even know the question, the son that doesn't know what to ask, okay? And so the Haggadah, the book, gives us these things to promote these questions or answer these questions, because the wise son, he already knows the question. He's got it. He's like, okay, give me some details, right? But the wicked son says basically, what's this thing that you're doing? You know, what's this all about for you? And that's saying that I don't want any part of it. And that's why he's called the wicked son. But you still have to respond to him and give him a good answer. Then you have the simple son. It says, basically, what is all this? What's going on? I don't understand. And then you give him a response and tell him what the Lord did for us. And then the ones who's unable to ask. It's like, I don't even know the question. I have no clue what's going on. I don't even know what to ask. And you answer him in a way to tell him what God did for you as well, and so he's able to comprehend. And then you have these 4 questions, the section called the Manishtana. And these are really attached to this in a way. And we say, how different is this night from all other nights? On all other nights we eat bread or matzah. On this night, why do we only eat matzah? And then we have the second question. How different this night is from all other nights. On all other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables. But why do we only eat bitter herbs tonight? And the third one, how different this night is from all other nights. On all other nights, we do not dip our vegetables even once. But why do we dip them twice tonight? And then the last question, how different is this night from all other nights? On all other nights, we eat our meals sitting or reclining. But tonight, why do we only eat reclining? Okay, those are the things. And to make this special and to make our children engaged and ask questions and so forth. So, the Haggadah goes through these 15 steps. We're going to go through them here in a minute. But interspersed in these 15 steps, there are some things that could be missed, and these are the cups. The first one's easy to identify and figure out where it is. The others are a little bit more complicated. But so I want to we'll cover that in just a second. Let's go through these 15 steps. If you have your sheet here, you can go to the second page. And here's the order of service, and it looks like this. And it covers these 15 steps right there. Covers these 15 steps, okay? And there actually there's a tradition to sing these steps. And so Sabrina and I will sing it, and if you know it, you can join in with us so you can hear something like what this does. So it goes like this. Kadesh Urchatz Karpas Yachatz Magid Rachsa Motzi Matzah Mahor Korech Shulchan Orech Tzafun Barech Hallel Nirtzah. Okay, so those are the 15 steps we go through for the Seder. And these, on your sheet, it gives a little explanation. We're going to go into a little bit more detail here in just a moment. But interspersed in those, we have these 4 cups of wine. And these 4 cups, they're for a purpose. And the passage that I want to draw your attention to that we get these cups from, they're connected to these, is Exodus chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. And I'm going to read this to you and point out the correlation between each of these cups. I don't think I have it in this, but if you look, if you want to come up after class and look at my book, I've tried to identify each four of these with the passage and the specific concept of the part that we're doing. So, Exodus 6, verses 6 through 8. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out. So, every time the Lord says, I'm going to do something, this is one of the cups in this passage. So, I will, and then the first thing is bring you out. Okay, and that is what we correlate to the cup of sanctification. I'm going to cause you to be different than the others, right? I'm going to separate you. And so this is the first cup, the cup of sanctification. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And the second one, I will deliver you from slavery to them. This is the cup of judgment. He's going to judge between them and take them. They are no longer going to be slaves. Number 3, I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. Of course, this is the obvious one. This is the cup of redemption. Okay? And then the fourth one says, I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And this is fairly obvious too. This is the cup of the kingdom or the cup of kingship, Malchut. Familiar phrase we've been discussing lately, especially if you went to Malchut. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. Okay, so how many cups do we have? 4. 4 cups, 4 expressions. Verse 8, I will bring you. Wait a minute, that throws our numbering off. He's going to do something else. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am the Lord. So we got 4. We got a 5th. So, Now, the reason why this isn't one of the 4 cups, there isn't an established 5th, is because this is always contingent upon obedience. This is according to the righteousness that Israel is living in. And they can be in the land, they can be out of the land. Okay? And so this is why this cup was not part of the set ones, and this is ones that the rabbi debated on. They said, are we going to, is this the one that's going to be included or not? And sort of the final consensus is this 5th cup is set aside on the Seder table and left for Eliyahu HaNavi, the prophet Elijah. Okay? And it's specifically for him that says when he comes and he drinks that, then boom.
Because he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, children to the fathers, meaning with his coming will be the new covenant where we will be obedient, and there won't be that contingency kind of thing anymore.
Exactly. It connects to Ezekiel, turning the heart of stone into heart of flesh. Yeah. So, yeah. Very good. Okay, so we have this 5th cup. So these are going to be interspersed throughout. So let's start walking through these. Well, let me just say one other thing. In most traditional Haggadah, a lot of messianic Haggadah do not include it, and unfortunately, I don't include it in mine either, because at that time I was not, I didn't understand it as well, but there's a section, I don't know if, I haven't really looked at this that much, the Master's Table by First Fruits. This is their introductory sort of Siddur, but there's a section in most Siddurim where these rabbis are just sitting around talking about stuff, and they're talking about redemption and, the Exodus and things like that. So why in the world would we need that? Okay, and so I do have that part in my Haggadah, and let me read that part. Maybe that'll help clarify
What part?
for you the part where the rabbis are talking to each other and talking about the redemption. Let's see. Here we go. Well, we'll find it real quick. Oh, here it is. Okay. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord our God took us out from there with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm. If the Holy One, blessed be He, had not taken our forefathers out of Egypt, then we, our children, and our children's children would have remained enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Even if all of us were wise, all of us understanding, all of us knowing the Torah, we would still be obligated to discuss the Exodus from Egypt, and everyone who discusses the Exodus from Egypt at length is praiseworthy. So it goes into this part where the rabbis are discussing, famous rabbis, and they're discussing because they are wise, and they still have to discuss it. They are knowledgeable about Torah. They still have to discuss it. Matter of fact, one of them is a proselyte, and so even he has to discuss it. And so it shows the merit of, even if these guys that it doesn't seem to apply to have to discuss it, then how much more so for the common person. Okay, so that's why it's included in there. So how many steps, does anybody remember how many steps there are for the service, for the Seder? 15, that is correct, okay? So we are going to go through each one of these steps and discuss each one of these, okay? So the first one is Kadesh. Kadesh. So that is a form, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? If you've never heard of this, but you've heard of Kiddush, right? You've done Kiddush, Friday nights, festivals, and so forth. It's from the same root word. It means to sanctify, to make holy, make distinct, separate, all that kind of stuff. So the Kadesh is what you would normally do at any festival, pretty much. You sanctify time. Say, we are now entering into time, and it's sanctified and set apart from common time. And you do that by blessing God over this cup of wine. There's special blessings that you say as you're entering into Pesach. You say the Shehekianu and the... what's the other one I've forgotten? Kiddush for Shabbat if it's Shabbat, thank you. So I think that may be the only ones. There's special one for...
There's the miracle.
The miracle, yeah,
Blessing.
Hanisim. Right. Okay, so those are the blessings that you do. And so this is, like I said, it's a normal Kiddush type thing with added blessings specific to the holiday. And so it just gets us into the thing and it gets us going. And then that moves us into our next step. Next step is Urchatz. And you'll notice we have Urchatz, and a little bit later we have Yachatz, 2 steps down. They're from the same root word as well, okay? Sorry. Rachatz. Rachza is the one. So Urchatz and Rachza is from the same root word. So Urchatz means you shall wash, and Rachza means just washing in general. And so this is where there's a ritual hand washing at the beginning before we dip our karpas. And there are different traditions about this. Some see it as a very light thing. It's not a big deal. And so like what we do traditionally is the one who's leading the Seder does that and not everybody else. Just save on time and save commotion and trying to get everybody logistically dealt with. And it's not, we're not eating very much at the beginning. The second step is karpas. And you want to talk about that, or you want me to?
Can't see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
So the third step is karpas. So you have to buy karpas ahead of time, right? So we usually use parsley, okay?
Lots of other traditions.
There's other traditions, but you're going to see mostly parsley on the Seder plate. And we wanted to show y'all the Seder plate.
Where?
Is it there? Oh, it's page 1. Okay, so this is the first element on your Seder plate that you're going to actually eat, partake of. And there is a blessing in your Haggadah that goes with this, because before we eat anything, we bless Hashem, right? So we blessed for the wine, we blessed for the hand washing, and now we're going to bless for the vegetable, which is the root of the ground, right? Okay. So we give a blessing, and then everyone gets a little piece of the parsley, and they're going to dip it in either salt water, or there's another tradition for vinegar. Okay?
Red wine.
Oh, sorry, specifically red wine vinegar. Has to be that, because that's from grapes, okay? Other vinegars come from other things that might
Could be
restricted
grains.
for Passover. So why the salt water? Some of you already know. Okay, so seawater is salty, right? So we've got the Yam Suf, okay, the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea, okay, that was salty. What else? Why? Tears. Tears are salty. If you taste them, they're salty.
You also have the drowning of the babies
Okay.
and the drowning of the Egyptians.
Okay, so the drowning of the babies in the Nile that Pharaoh ordered. So several reasons why salt water. Okay, the other option is vinegar. Well, the red wine vinegar, because why? Any ideas?
Has anybody ever done red wine vinegar?
Has anybody used it? Okay, you have.
Me too.
Now it's our favorite in our family. So you want to share why?
So it's in my reading, it's a connection to the origin of why the Hebrews were in Egypt to begin with, which was the sale of Joseph. And what did the brothers give to their father? They showed him the coat dipped in blood. And so here we're dipping the parsley into the red wine vinegar as a remembrance of this is what got us down in Egypt to begin with. And the connection then also to the betrayal of Joseph also reminds us of the betrayal of our master.
Yep, exactly. And the price that he paid on our behalf. And the carpus, the parsley, when we dip it into the red wine vinegar, it also is visually stimulating and reminds us of the hyssop in the blood. Okay, you want to continue?
The other is when Yeshua was on the cross, would they give him to drink? Some gall.
And vinegar.
And vinegar, right? So it reminds us of his suffering on the cross as well. Okay, that's karpas.
Okay.
I think we're finished with karpas.
Okay. So next step is yachatz. Okay, this is an important step. Yachatz is the breaking. Yachatz means breaking. Okay, and so it's the break. So if you've never been to a Passover Seder, then there's a lot of things I'm having to backtrack and explain. But of course, you know that we eat matzah, right? Matzah, if you're not familiar, is just a very flat, unleavened, crisp cracker, big giant cracker, you know? And so, and as Rabbi, says, it's his favorite thing to eat of all time. And I'm joking if you know Rabbi. Rabbi does not like matzah. And so, because it's bland, tasteless, all that kind of stuff. But our family, we enjoy it. Our kids go through it like it's candy. And so, anyway, we're going to eat that through the night and through the week of Passover. But there's 3 special pieces of matzah for the Seder meal, okay? We put 3 pieces into a big napkin thing and use dividers to divide them, okay? If you can do it, you can, ad hoc it, or you can actually purchase what's called a matzah tash. And we should have brought one. It's a big thing that has 3 compartments in it. You put your 3 pieces of matzah. There's other traditions, you stack them and put things between them or whatever on the table. And so with this part of the Seder called yachatz, you take out the middle matzah and then you break it. Very symbolic. Okay, we can all have our symbolisms. I'm going to just let that run through your mind a little bit. And specifically break it where it's not even. So you have a smaller section and a larger section. Okay? And so you take I believe it's a smaller, I have to look at this every single year. Does anybody remember? Is it the smaller or the larger that you're going to hide away?
The larger one.
The larger one? Okay, it's the larger one. And you're going to put it in, generally we have an afikomen bag. Okay, it's specific for this use, but you can wrap it in a cloth or something like that. And so it becomes what I just said, the afikomen. Afikomen is interesting because it's actually a Greek loan word in Hebrew. And it means dessert, but more literally that something that comes after. Okay? And so in other words, something that will return or come after. And so the afikomen, that larger piece of the matzah that was broken, gets put into this white, usually cloth, gets wrapped in a cloth, and gets hidden or buried. Interesting, huh? Okay? And it's fun because if you have kids, they're going to keep their eye on that, the whole time. They're like, I got my bug eye. I'm watching that the whole time. But you figure out a way to slip it out and hide it when they're not looking, okay? And so inevitably, they blink for a second. They're like, hey, where'd it go? And then they're distracted the rest of the Seder. But you hide it. And then later on, it'll be found. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But there's some things that go along with that. But generally, it's hidden for the kids to find, okay? And that's that. And then there's another section within this. Before you actually hide it, there's a tradition to put it on your shoulder and say, Halechem Oni, or something to that effect. It's basically, this is the bread of affliction, okay? And this is what we identified as. This is the bread of affliction. Like you're carrying it out of Egypt with you.
Does it matter which shoulder you put it over?
I do not know. Do not get me lying about that. Okay? So it's probably in your Seder, in your Haggadah. And then the next step is the Magid. You want to talk about that? No. Okay. The Magid. Sabrina's trying to multitask here, so it's difficult for her.
My brain is kind of focused.
Yep. So the Magid is the main section of this whole thing. The Magid is the Magid means to tell or story or something like that, and so it is what we're trying to accomplish. It is telling the story of the Exodus, telling the story of Passover, and telling of that redemption that God brought to His children. And we are actually, something that I didn't mention at first, but we are actually supposed to enter into the Seder and go into it with the mindset of as if we personally had just come out of Egypt and just been delivered ourselves. We're supposed to be reliving this because the scripture goes through when it says, you shall tell your children, and it's you shall tell your children how God delivered you. It doesn't say how God delivered them or past generations. It's God delivered you. And so it's always also a great idea, great tradition to include your own personal stories as well of redemption, what God has done for you and how He's brought you out during this process. So you could put it insert it into here somewhere, or you could talk about it during the meal or someplace like that. And it's a great testimony to include for your children as well, because our children, we make assumptions that people know our story, or we know our story, but our children don't necessarily know our story unless we've told it. And this is a great opportunity to tell them our story and tell them how God has taken us out, redeemed us, brought us out of whatever situation it has been in. It's a great opportunity. And so there's a long section of this. This is where we actually ask the questions. We talk about the sons. We talk about the whole Exodus event. And then there's a special part in here that's sort of the focal point. And it is it's an interesting passage because it can be translated and interpreted a couple of different ways. And the literal way that it's interpreted is not used for the Haggadah. So I'm going to pull up the literal passage, and we're going to compare the two. Deuteronomy 26:5. Oh, wow. This actually does it. Let's see. Oh, no, it does the right one. Okay, it does the traditional one. Okay. A wandering Aramean was my father. My father was a wandering Aramean. And he went down into Egypt and sojourned there, few in number, and there he became a nation, great, mighty, and populous. And the Egyptians treated us harshly and humiliated us and laid on us hard labor. The Haggadah translates it this way: an Aramean sought to destroy my father, and he went down to Egypt. Okay? It can be read both ways. But this is the way to make this really even more so connected to the Exodus, is it says that this didn't just begin here. This began with Laban. Okay? And it began a long time before the Exodus actually ever happened. And there's a whole connection to that we're not going to have time to go into. But that's a part that we need to remember. That's a critical component and probably the central passage that everything revolves around that we need to include in here. And then we talk about how God is delivered. God did it and not an angel. God did it and not a seraph. God did it and not a messenger. But God alone is the one that delivered the children of Israel. And then we talk about the 10 plagues, the 10 judgments that God bestowed upon Egypt. And we go through and we list all of these 10 out. And here's a listing. It'll be a listing in each of the Haggadahs. And so they go through all of these. The first one is blood, then frogs, then lice. And then the next one, a lot of translation will say flies. But it literally says swarms. And this is interpreted to be swarms of wild beasts that ran through and ravaged Egypt. And then pestilence, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and then finally death of the firstborn. So one of the things that we try to do is keep kids engaged, because really this is for the kids. This is for the next generation. We're ingraining this, indoctrinating, if you will, our children to understand this and know this and have a connection to this. And so when you do things that are both visually and auditory stimulation and tactile stimulation and all that kind of stuff, then people remember it more. The kids remember it. They experience it. They have nostalgia and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that we like to do is sort of have fun during this time. And so when we have, plagues of locusts and frogs and stuff like that, we got these little plastic or rubber type little critters that we start throwing and throwing across the table, and they go flying everywhere. Or these little things that you push the little frog and he jumps, And then everybody's favorite, is hail. Because hail involves flying marshmallows. Yes. And so we have lots of fun during that. And our kids have enjoyed it growing up, and that's a memorable part of Passover, but they remember the plagues because of it. We also have, and you can purchase these kits called, what are they called? The bag of plagues. And they have masks for all the different plagues.
Mask.
Yeah. And so all the different plagues have their own little mask, and everybody can pick one and wear one during this. So that's another way you can do this. And so it has the 10 plagues. Then we sing this song called Dayenu. It would have been sufficient, or it would have been enough, right? And it goes through, if the Lord had only done this, but no, he didn't do just this. You know, it's like it slices and dices and cuts, you know, but wait, there's more. Right. And so, but that's what it goes through. It goes through step by step by step. If God had only done this, it would have been good enough. But he also did this. If he only did that, those two things, that would have been good enough. But it just goes on and on and on of all that God has done to deliver his people, bring them to the land, give them his covenant, and give them ultimately the temple. And we add, of course, that he gave us Mashiach. He gave us Yeshua, Mashiach, okay? And he didn't have to do any of that, but he did out of his mercy, out of his love. Since you're taking a break, I'm going to do the next one.
Okay, well, here's where we have a cup.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay? So second cup happens right here. It's not considered, the cups are not considered a step. So that's why you just have to read your Haggadah, right? I mean, you just read through it and it tells you what to do. So that's why it's so easy to do this, because a Haggadah just takes you step by step. Okay, so step number 6 is rachza, and it comes from the same word as number 2, urchatz. Same concept. This is washing your hands. Because why? We're about to eat our first matzah, okay? So just like on Friday night, some people, some families have the tradition of washing their hands before they eat bread. This is bread. It's just unleavened bread, right? So it's still bread, okay? So it still requires a hand washing. So this is when you would take time to do that. Again, it's, you have to be set up, or otherwise it's going to take a long time. So if you have a lot of people at your Seder, you want to have, try to get through this, because it's a long night, so you got to try to get through.
Can I say something
Yes.
in regard to that? So speaking of long night, we really didn't tell you, but traditionally, Seder nights, usually when you light candles and you finish, if you do all the steps, you're talking about a 4-hour process or so, sometimes longer. There have been different Haggadahs developed to make it shorter and get in all the steps and make it where you've actually accomplished everything. But I want to emphasize one point. The point is that it's not a race. It's not to say I ran this race and I finished and I'm done. I bought I got a T-shirt to prove it. The concept is to engage, to thank Hashem that you are delivered, and to remember his deliverance in every generation, and to pass that on to the next generation. Okay, that's the key. Go ahead.
So this is just the hand washing before you eat the matzah, just like before your challah or a meal, okay?
Mm-hmm. And so there's 2 different sections, the motzi and matzah, that come next.
Okay.
And they're tied to that if you want to just talk about those. Or
So 7 is motzi, and this is when we bless God for the matzah. It's all it is the hamotzi. And then 8 is the eating of the matzah, okay? And it's plain. It's just the matzah. Nothing is on it. It's just the plain matzah.
right. So we do this, and there's separate steps here that we're going to see because there's separate commandments. So this fulfills the commandment. It says, "And you shall eat matzah." Okay. So there's things that the scriptures say that the Lord tells his people to do on Passover, and then things to do through the week. But specifically on Passover, it says, you shall eat matzah, you shall eat bitter herbs, and you shall eat the Pesach offering if the temple's standing, that's a contingent one. And so matzah and bitter herbs are the two real commandments that are for this event. And so we do that, and we do them separately to make sure we fulfilled those commandments.
Okay. So after that, that's all there is to 9.
Yeah.
To 8 is just eating matzah. Number 9 is your maror. This is the bitter herb. Mm-hmm. There's different traditions of what to eat here, okay? Every Seder we've ever been in, maybe it's just a messianic thing, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But other Jewish traditions have there's different bitter herbs. But we use horseradish, and you can get regular horseradish, or you can get hot horseradish.
Or you can grate it fresh.
And I try, but I never make it hot enough.
If you grate it too far ahead of time, like if you do it the day before, it's going to lose all its heat.
Yeah, I don't know how to keep the heat in it. But so you don't just eat it plain. You're taking a piece of matzah and you're dipping it, okay? We do not give an option. This is not, because like Darren said, this is one of the 3 commands. Okay, we got matzah, the bitter herbs, and then the Pesach lamb. Okay, so you need to do it, right? And so we try not to say anything. We already know it's coming. We know people are not going to be happy about this. So if you warn them ahead of time, then they're going to be like, "Ooh, I don't want to." But just, this is what's next, and this is what's next. And, even just a little taste, still, you taste the bitter, right? But the goal is to eat enough that makes you cry. Why? Why do we want tears to well up in our eyes? To remember the suffering of the Israelites in Egypt. We can't imagine. I can't imagine, but it's a physical thing that can happen in our eyes. Those tears come up and we feel it, and it stays in our mind, right? It puts that in our mind of the suffering.
Can I interject something? Something we haven't mentioned is a tradition that we're supposed to do, and it's actually required, is that when we drink the cups, when we eat the elements, the foods, not the meal, but the different symbolic elements that are required, we're supposed to lean. Supposed to lean to the left. Why? We're reclining, okay? Because in ancient times, they would actually recline on one hand and then eat their food with the other. And so and that represent, you are free. You're not a slave. Slaves have to stand at attention and serve, okay? But if you're reclining and eating at leisure, you are the master. You are no longer the slave. And so we do that, we remember that symbolically. It may seem weird, but it's a reminder. And it connects us to a culture that's long gone, but it reminds us of these weird things have purpose and meaning.
Darren.
Yes.
If you agree to, may I say something on this suffering part that you were just saying to Brenda? Since October 7th, I went to New York, so I got a Jewish newspaper, and there was an article in there that said that when you are Jewish, and I can say not surely replacement theology either, but the body of Christ, going to this Jewish verse, she was saying that the sufferings over there, they could actually feel it. Mm-hmm. But if they also read an article about if but they felt, sympathy, but it wasn't the same as their family, Jewish. So now with us, I can say with Angel here, and even looking at you, Karen, we felt the pain, because we are one in Yeshua.
Yep.
So that's what made me think of when you said, Sabrina, about imagining, the suffering. But as we get closer to Yeshua, I believe we do feel that. Maybe not as much as just depending on your relationship, but we do get to feel the sufferings of our brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Because we're one in Him.
Yes, and I feel that we, especially as a messianic synagogue, have probably felt that more than a lot of churches, because of our connection with the Jewish people. And so we need to continue to have that empathy, that compassion, those attachments. The next step is called the korech, and this is also called the Hallel sandwich. And this comes, people eat it, and usually they don't even know why they're doing it. They're like, I don't want to do that. So, but really, let me explain what happens. So you create a little sandwich. You use matzah, you use maror, which is the bitter herb. You use something called chazaret, which is like generally romaine lettuce or something like that. And you also use, you can also, I think, use the charoset. We didn't talk about the charoset. It's on the Seder plate. Charoset is a really nice sweet apple and nut mixture, and it's to remind us of the mortar that was used to make the bricks and to put the bricks together and everything back in Egypt. And it also is a reminder that even in the most bitter of circumstances, it can be sweetened through hope. And so that charoset brings hope to all this. Anyway, it's all put together on a sandwich. Put your matzah on top and bottom. Then you eat it like a sandwich. Why? Is it just a goofy tradition? Does anybody know why?
Is it to remember everything?
Close. It's actually to fulfill the commandment. Hallel did this. We don't know. Here's the deal. It would make maybe more sense if we actually were able to eat the lamb with it. So we would have the lamb, the matzah, and the bitter herbs, because that's what the scripture says. And in Exodus 12:8, it says, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, they shall eat it, meaning the lamb. Okay, so Hallel said, then this is to be taken literally. It means with it means all together as one, like a sandwich. Okay? So then we have Shulchan Aruch. So, you want to say something about that?
Okay, number 11 is Shulchan Aruch. This is your
Literally means
ready table. It means ready table. Shulchan is table. Orech is your meal, your ready meal. So this is a meal that you've already cooked ahead of time, and it's just sitting there waiting on you, okay? It's ready. And so some traditional things. Again, maybe this is something you've never cooked, and you want to add something new this year, okay? Maybe you've never had this, but usually you have what's called matzah ball soup, okay? Okay, if you haven't had that, you should try it, okay? You can get a mix at the store. You can buy a little mix. Make sure it says kosher for Passover.
K for P.
KFP, kosher for Passover. But yeah, you can get a mix and make your own matzah ball soup. That's a traditional dish. Usually you have a meat dish and then your veggies and things like that. So this is your nice meal that you've prepared, just like, like a Friday night meal. Okay? And during this is when you tell the kids, okay, after they've eaten, you're like, hey kids, it's time to go look for the afikomen, okay? And so they get up and they start running around and looking for the afikomen.
Chaos ensues.
Yes. And so when they find it, they bring it to the leader, and there's supposed to be an interaction that happens. The child is supposed to say, I have the afikomen, and you need the afikomen, and we can't continue the Seder without it. So what are we going to do? And so there's this, going back and forth and bargaining. And so the leader is supposed to have something to give them, like a prize or something. It could be simple, but something that a kid would like. And then you exchange. And so you get the afikomen, and they get a prize, and then you get to continue. So that's why it's so important that's why it's a big deal for kids, because they know, a prize is coming. So.
They get excited.
And they're excited.
That leads us to our next step.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
I was just reading Dennis Prager's Haggadah,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that his growing up experience, that was like the biggest deal. I mean, in our family, it's been something really small.
Right.
But in
Yeah,
his thing,
some people go
it was
crazy.
really big, and it actually was more significant than even any birthday presents. His grandfather gave him a shortwave radio, which opened the world of radio. His career is in radio. And then later he got a typewriter.
Wow.
And that opened the world of publishing books. So
Wow.
that formulated his future.
Yes.
All by finding the out, being the one to find the out.
Uh-huh. I've heard people giving like hundreds of dollars and different things like that. Crazy. Okay. Yes, Karen.
If your family only has one child, where's the competition?
Just in making it hard.
Or invite,
Your husbands?
Yeah.
or invite maybe,
Yeah.
cousins, your family.
Yeah.
Or
maybe.
friends. Yeah.
Or friends.
Yeah.
Also, it doesn't have to be competition as much as you're just holding a ransom.
Yeah.
It's like, you need this to continue, but I need what you have.
Right. Very good. Okay, so that leads us to our next step of tzafun. Tzafun is where we actually eat this afikomen. And we make it a special deal, make it a big deal. And one of the things that we do is we look at the matzah and see, of course, we see a picture of our master, right? We see him broken. We see him hidden. We see him brought back, resurrected. We see him pierced and striped and bruised. And we see that all within the matzah. And then we do some scriptures and different things. But then you're supposed to, everybody at the Seder table is supposed to eat the afikomen, okay? It's not one person, and everyone is supposed to partake of it. So it's a very interesting tradition that Yeshua-believing Judaism has developed over these thousands of years. But we can clearly see that most likely there's a connection of this tradition that was developed by Yeshua's disciples,
I have a question that's always been on my mind. For our brothers that don't believe in Mashiach, and they do this process of the afikomen, how do they explain what's going on? What is their mindset? Because that's so curious to me. Like, can you not see that?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of people, mostly it's just dismissed as it's a tradition, but we can get into some personal conversation on that. But yeah, mostly it's just dismissed. It's just, this is a tradition. We are partaking in the suffering of Israel, and it looks at the three pieces of matzah as God, Israel, and what was the third one?
Thought it was the priest, not the priesthood? No.
It may have been the priesthood. I can't remember. It's been
Priest, God, priesthood, and Israel? No.
I don't remember, to be honest. Sorry.
Forgot. Sorry.
So anyway, and then sharing in the suffering. But we are sharing in the suffering together. We're eating the afikomen, that which was broken on our behalf. And so in this time, we as a family, traditionally, we make it sort of a somber moment. We sing the song Troy Mitchell wrote, Zegufi. If you guys have been here for Meal Messiah, you've heard that song. It's talking about the broken body of Messiah. And we sing that as we're breaking, we're passing around the afikomen, breaking it, and then meditating on what he's done for us, and then we all eat it together after a blessing. And blessings take place between each one of these. And then we now, that's the last thing you're supposed to eat. You're not supposed to eat any other food after this point. It's supposed to be, it basically takes the place of the Passover lamb. Okay, because the Passover lamb cannot be eaten, and so it becomes the central component of the Seder. And we partake of that, we let that taste linger, and we focus on that. And then we do the traditional blessings after meal in this next step called Barech, which means to bless. And so that's what that's all about. If you've ever done grace after meals, that's really all it is. It has all these blessings that we bless God for just as we would for a traditional meal. But there's also a special, two special things that happen within it. One is we actually drink the third cup. Yes.
Zegufi.
Z-E-H.
Z-E-H.
And the next word, G-U-F-I. And it can be found in the back of the Meal of Messiah book by First Fruits. So at the end of this, at the end of the blessings, grace after meals, we add the third cup. We have this third cup, the cup of redemption, and then we go into the Hallel. We sing the Hallel or recite the Hallel, which is simply Psalm 113 through 115. However, 113 and 114 have already actually been included in the Magid section, so we've already actually included those. And so we just do Psalm 115 through 118 to end this. And then the last cup is taken, the cup of the kingdom, and then we do this last part, which is nirtzah, which means acceptance, meaning God has accepted all this and has found favor, and this is a concluding thing. And then we shout out, next year in Jerusalem. And then we break out in song, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, and so forth. Okay? And so this basically takes us through the Seder.
Please visit our website, shalommacon.org, to learn more about us, join our live services, access other teachings, sign up for our newsletter, join our private network that will connect you with our greater community from around the world, or contribute to the work of Shalom Macon. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to connecting with you.